just like that. It's funny because you don't sense a change, but all of a sudden you're being recorded. But awesome. We're sitting here with Dylan Schrot, CFL Draft prospect, former personal trainer at World Health, an avid reader. The accolades you had this past season in the CIS: Canada West All-Star, U Sports Second Team All-Canadian, and recently signed to a sports agency. You can shout them out if you want.
Elevation Sports Agency, yeah.
Sweet. And CFL Combine Invitation, which is happening in about a month, right?
March 11th in Edmonton.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So what's it like going through this CFL draft preparation and process for you?
Man, it's surreal. I mean, you start playing this sport, and didn't really think I'd end up to this point yet. Here I am. Just taking it one day at a time, and just it's that whole process of just being a little bit better than you were yesterday, and I mean it's an exciting feeling for sure. But trying to stay as even keeled as possible about it.
Did you ever expect this, like starting football in grade 11 and then having no offers when you're coming out of school? Like you're coming out of high school, no offers, and you decided to go play junior. Like, did you ever expect to be pursuing it at this high level?
Not really, to be honest. It was probably my second year of junior that that I kind of, I guess, realized that it could be possible for me. We had a guy on our team. His name is Whitman Tamuziak. He was a fifth-year junior guy on that VI Raiders team, and he was practicing with the BC Lions. And he had a tremendous year for us. And that year, he actually ended up getting signed by the BC Lions right out of junior. So, and he was a close friend of mine. So, seeing him, go through that and do that just showed me that it was possible for me too. So. I think just having guys around you that do that to show you that it's possible is always it's a big help.
I always found it strange because it was like I maybe had working out in gyms or like semi-private gyms and having people around that were like in the CFL. I never felt like it was cool when you like chatted with them, but eventually it came like, oh, they put in the same type of work ethic and like they're there as much as I am. So it's like, it does start to seem like the more time you're spending around those guys, the more you start to seem like this is possible. Like this could be something that's a reality for
that they're actual human beings.
Yeah, they're not much different from you and I. Like,
Well, that's
for sure.
That's the funny thing though, is like I even found. Like, I grew up going to football games and going to Bomber games specifically. So, like, I remember being the 4-year-old kid, and actually it was, like, the Midas Man used to come around. Like, I think it was Midas Man, but there was these ugly yellow footballs that they would toss into the crowd.
Yeah.
And so I would be the cute little kid up front, and every game I would get, I think I had a collection of 20 of these footballs for a little bit. And then my parents eventually were like, we don't need these red-ass footballs anymore. No, I think that sticks out in my memory. But it was like the Milt Stiegels and the guy like Charles Roberts and whatever. Like those were the names that stuck out for me and just started to make me love the game of football. Like I grew up in a hockey family, but then football took over and I ended up switching high schools to actually pursue it. So it's cool when these guys that you thought were larger than life, all of a sudden you go down that path and it's like, oh, I could be one of those one day.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a similar experience of like getting into football and just like seeing those guys succeed at that high level?
Trying to think of a. So I guess, okay, I'm going to answer this question, I guess, in two parts. So I found my passion for football. I was about 10 years old watching what I'm pretty sure was the Grey Cup, I want to say, Montreal versus Edmonton. And, I saw Ben Cahoon dive over the middle, make this tremendous one-handed catch. And it was the greatest catch I'd ever seen at that point in my life. And at that moment, I knew, I was like, I love this game. Like, I didn't start playing until I was older, but it was funny. Every year I'd ask my mom, hey, like, can I play football? And she's, no, it's too dangerous. And, can I play hockey? No, I'm sorry. Like, we can't afford it. So every year it was football, hockey, you know. So I just came home one day in grade 11 and I told her I'm playing football. She didn't give her a choice. So yeah, that's kind of where I found my passion for it. And when I guess the moment now where I realized that it could be possible for me, well, I just alluded to it a few minutes ago, but in 2016, I was playing junior for the Calgary Colts, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of the practice roster with the Calgary Stampeders. So just being around their facilities day in, day out, they're a very successful team, as we know. They just won the Grey Cup. But seeing all the work that they put in behind the scenes and, seeing just what type of people they have there, what type of athletes they have there, opened my eyes to, the possibilities that, I could one day be in that same position.
Well, and then you went through some injuries in your junior career too. So was there ever a time through that where you thought, like, this might not happen for me, or you even considered, hanging up the cleats and retiring?
Yeah, absolutely. There are those thoughts of doubt.
So what was the situation? Like, so the first year it was a contract dispute sort of between, they wouldn't grant you your release from a team?
Yeah.
Was that from Vancouver or from?
That was from, the VI Raiders. So the head coach from the VI Raiders, he got a job coaching for the Calgary Colts. And it made sense for me. I was in the trades at the time to, follow him out there to Calgary and continue to play for him. Matthew Blocker, Coach Snoop, he's to this day, I love the guy. He's done tremendous things for my family and I. So what had happened was, the VI Raiders didn't grant me my player release to go play for him. I had an option to move back home and play for the Winnipeg Rifles, but just, at the time, that's just not something I wanted to do. I was already 2 years moved out in another city, and I wanted to continue to be away from home and go through that experience. So I decided to sit out a year, and I just played in a men's league, nothing too serious, and just focused on training. So the next year, it was March of 2015. It was about, a month before spring camp. Playing in just a touch football game with my buddies, and I was playing quarterback, and I'm scrambling out, and I try to make a juke and make a guy miss, and just planted the knee wrong, and boom, there she went. So that was 2 straight years and almost 3 calendar years between my last game, or in between games, I guess.
Wow.
With the junior games.
I can relate to that. So my football career, and it's funny because I find that sometimes you feel you have it just happens and you don't really have a say in what happened. Like, I wasn't scouted out of high school, and I actually would have, a lot of my buddies from school went down to Okanagan or VI or went to BC to go play football. And I had an opportunity. It wasn't really exactly what I wanted. And so I ended up playing for the Rifles, but I got hurt 2 straight years coming out of high school. Yeah. And that's tough to go through. 2 years of not playing football is a long time. And it starts and especially it was preseason guys rolling up on my ankle and fracturing ankles. So it's like you spend 6-8 weeks in a cast and then a walking boot. Yeah. And then and they don't realize that 6 months later, you're still trying to even out, your muscles. You have imbalances and things. Yeah. And then got hurt the next year. And it was again, going through this twice in a row. And it was do I hang these, the cleats up? Am I done? But what I really liked about it was I was passionate about the training, about playing football. And I was this is what I should be doing. So that's when I decided to walk on to the Bisons. Yeah. I was already going to school there, made the roster. Unfortunately, my position was stacked that year. So it was the Dembski, Keenan, and Coombs year. Two CFLers, so 2 Bombers. Well, I guess Keenan is not with the Bombers. His contract was up, I think. So I think he's a free agent. I forget exactly.
I'm not 100% sure, but
yeah. And then Coombs, I believe, is still out in Toronto. But it was I'm competing, and at that time, those guys aren't CFLers, and that they're guys competing for the same job. So it's it's tough to go through that battle and know that they're good. But now we know really how good they are.
All 3 of them, yeah. I mean, they're all studs in the CFL right now. Yeah.
So, but then that led you to starting at World Health and starting to become a trainer. And then do you think that sort of put you on the path, and what was that like?
Oh, absolutely. I always say that, the ACL tear was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. It's a blessing in disguise for sure. It's a very humbling experience, and it led me to to that, world health and, pursuing well, I shouldn't say a career, but, a job, as a personal trainer. And the big thing was, there's so many people around in that facility that I can learn from, that I can, I guess, gather information on how I can, sounds corny, but be a better me. That they had this setup where, every month you're taking some sort of courses that are taught by the elite trainers that have been doing it for, 8 to 12 years or however long. So they're teaching these courses on, little things like mobility, nutrition, things like that. And it was extremely helpful for, me as an athlete, obviously, and me as a trainer wanting to, inspire others to be the best versions of themselves. So, it was a great experience, and I could definitely see myself getting back into it, down the road.
Yeah, that's awesome that they kind of offer, or like they use elite trainers kind of offering that knowledge down. I think that's super important, especially as a trainer. Mm-hmm. I know I worked out probably for about 7 years of my life before becoming a personal trainer. And I came into personal training thinking I knew everything. Just to realize how, and even today, like I know nothing. I feel like I know nothing. It is so much. Like mobility wasn't even in my head at all. Like that wasn't a word that existed in my vocabulary until I started training. Yeah. And it changed my life too, because I realized how bad my posture was, and it helped with my posture, and I teach it to my clients religiously. Yeah. And then things like nutrition too. I didn't have any idea coming into personal training, and that's kind of where I started to learn about it. And so it wasn't, to me before, it was just about lifting heavier and heavier weights until I dislocated my shoulder eventually doing that. So I kind of I always learn the hard way, but like when you went into personal training, like what was your idea of kind of like living healthy, and then like how did that change going into personal training?
Oh, there was definitely a paradigm shift. Like you just said, I was just all about lifting heavy weights, and I'll do some sprints here and there. But learning, different perspectives on, from different trainers was huge, because there's like a lot of people kind of have their own backgrounds, right, or things that they're into. So everyone kind of brings their own little, I guess, flavor to the meal. Nice. So it was awesome for me to learn just different avenues that exercise can really benefit your life, and not just lifting heavy weights or just trying to run as fast as you can.
There's something about the health and fitness community that either human optimization is a term that's thrown out there, but just trying to better the self is and what elements of that can you do? So like dietitians or trainers, and it seems like everybody sort of is trying to get at the same thing, like what's a holistically healthy person. And so it's also cool, like when you start that journey and you realize, like you get to know people, and then they have their base of knowledge, and it just keeps going out, and then you try and find how that relates to you and what your training style is. But then you realize how much information is out there and how many new things are getting developed all the time.
Well, and then the thing is with personal training too is that it's come a long ways. Before it was just like, I'm just going to help you lose weight by pushing you really hard. Like I feel like that's how personal training used to be. And now it's there, because there's this kind of, and there still is this wall between all these kind of different practices like massage therapy, mobility and training, and whether it's bodybuilding or whatever. There's always this wall between everything, and that's kind of starting to meld together a little bit into this kind of one big package. Like, how can I help you get to your goals? Like, help you lose weight while maintaining like good posture and functionality in your body, like, and offer things like, I know through Good Life, they offer courses for things like fascial mobility, which has been a huge one for Good Life, and it changes people's lives, where they like stop going to massage therapy and just get that instead.
Yeah, it's funny though, because you find what works for you. I think there's so much information out there. Like now everybody, like I'm not somebody who does chiro or anything, and it was sitting in an office chair and getting lower back pain, and it was like, oh, I got to do something for this. And then it was getting into yoga, and now I'm like, I couldn't imagine going a week without doing yoga, because it's like, yeah, my posture, my spine, like my mobility, and I can do things that, like, you know, being, I would say, still an athletic build and a bigger person, it's like I'm able to do these movements that, like, the skinny athlete that just lifts heavy can't do, right? Yeah. So it's like, and then you start to see how all of this plays into it. So maybe, do you have any sort of training things that are out of the norm that you picked up during that time?
Ooh, out of the norm. During that time, trying to think, like,
and or just practices or things that you
yeah,
do.
like, I didn't really get into yoga too much until a few months before I moved back here. I actually just got back into it again, for this combine prep. It's I mean, I love it. Like, as you said, to get into those positions and, learning how to optimize movement, if that makes sense.
Yep.
But out of the norm, I wouldn't say when I was working as a trainer there was anything like too crazy, as I was still going through the rehab process myself. As I'd started working there in October of 2015, and I had my surgery in July. So I was about, roughly 3 months post-op. So there was a lot of it was just rehab and getting, ready for football again. I wouldn't say anything, I don't know, out of the ordinary. Like, it's hard to me to even think of, like, what's normal these days, It's
true. I think there's so many, like, I even found throughout my football career, it was like you had guys that were more about powerlifting and certain things, and then it was like the explosive Olympic lifts and like being able to do a clean and jerk and a bunch of, like, heavy weight and stuff. So it's like there were different schools of thought and a lot of ways you could get to, like, that optimal level. And so it was, I would say at that time I wasn't really willing to go outside the box. It was like lift heavy, do those things, but, like, there's always new things being developed and new things to try. But it's super cool. So I'm seeing the toque that you're wearing. Is it a Bell Let's Talk toque?
Yeah, not by accident.
I was like, keeping it on inside. I didn't even question it, to be honest with you. I'm like, it is that cold out in Winnipeg right now. But so why the Bell Let's Talk toque?
I want to be a psychology major. That's what I'm studying in school right now. And I mean, like, let's get the conversation started early. I know that their promotion is for the 30th and whatnot, but at U of M we just had a Bell Let's Talk night on Friday night there with the volleyball and hockey games, and it's just like the mental health, I guess, issue is just something that I see that needs to be touched on a lot more than it is. So I mean, anything I can do to raise awareness to that and to try to help people through their struggles, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. I think, one of the things we did here was initially we volunteered at, actually my time with the Bisons, we went out to Thompson and we were part of their suicide prevention program, flag football.
Oh, cool.
And that was a really interesting experience. But it's something, and even in this last year we volunteered, it was a former member of the podcast, Colin, and I went out to, it was a marathon, like a 10K and I believe 5K run, and volunteered our services for the day. And it was to do with suicide prevention, again, and mental health. So it's been something, and what I found was actually having conversations about how mental health and certain issues and addictions have affected me and my own family. So having those conversations and having those communities of people talking about just being honest about their story is really important. That sense of community is actually one of the things that keeps us strong and able to, to power forward and be successful in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it is important, and that's awesome that's part. So so why this issue? How does it affect you?
For me personally, it definitely hits close to home. I last fall I had an uncle who passed away with schizophrenia. He was living with for a number of years. And like super close to me, my mother, she was having, symptoms of depression for, a few years. And then, we find out that it was actually due to celiac disease.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a gut disease that's causing this. And, I think that's another, misconception, I guess, is that, mental illness is not treatable and it's something that you live with and that you have to deal with. I think that, there are definitely, ways to treat it. And I think nutrition is a huge factor in all that. So once we kind of figured out, okay, well, this is what's going on with her, get her diet under control, and all of a sudden, it's subsided in, a substantial way.
I didn't know, is there a link between celiac and depression?
Yeah. I guess something, your intestine, she was explaining to me this morning. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's an intestine problem, and your body can't digest food, I guess, properly, and I guess it's linked to depression and inflammation as well, and
that holistic health seems to be so much more mainstream now than ever before, like the different parts of a person coming together. And so it's like, you put your physical health, like whether it's celiac, whether it's even an injury or anything, and it's like those things can, the word trigger comes to mind, but I feel like that's becomes a loaded word now. But so if you're suffering with something physically, you can see how that brings down other aspects of your life. And so
absolutely,
to find ways to treat, whether it is celiac or some sort of intolerance to food or gluten or things, like you can see now people who are maybe looking at things like diet and exercise levels and even sort of fulfillment and purpose are in that too, right? Like you can easily fall into this road of like just negativity. And I've even found that through my injuries or even having too much time to myself, where it's like you get in this stagnant mindset and you don't feel like you're accomplishing. So you have to like reset and figure out exactly the trajectory. So it's like you go through those lulls. And I think that's an important thing in terms of growth. So do you find that you ever went through things like that, like times like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are always times of struggle, and I don't think that people should just jump to the conclusion, I'm depressed, or I have depression. It's like, well, no, like you're just kind of going through, I guess, the cycle of life, right? There's ups and downs in life, and how you respond to those adversities is ultimately, how I guess your character is going to shine. And I guess just not staying down. Right? Like you're down, but not out. Like there's always something to work towards and something to be optimistic for in the future.
I completely agree with that assessment, and that sort of line of thinking is like, there's sort of a healthy level of like, you're going to go through ups and downs in life. Like nobody is going to go through life without experiencing loss or some kind of tragedy, quote unquote, or just stressful time where they're working too much, or like maybe you're eating too much McDonald's, like, but you go through all these different phases in life. And it's like, I think we've talked about it before, but it's like, we sort of have this expectation that life should always be up at the top. Yeah. And it's like, that's not realistic. No. So what can you do? Well, you can equip yourself to better ride those waves. You can realize, all right, I may have had a shitty day or week or whatever it is. I may have had a tough time, but, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to figure out what the next step is, what the next thing I need to be doing, or maybe, and it's that self-assessment that's so important too. Yeah. But I do think that then there's the next level, which a true mental health issue, where there might be something that lies outside of the norm, or if you are in that negative place for, a long time, it's like, there may need to be some sort of outside thing that comes in and helps that. So whether that is, like pills can help people, but it's like get through that troublesome time. Yeah. But it's like that shouldn't be our first inclination.
I agree. That should be like an end game. Yeah. Like if you can't find an answer, maybe that can help you.
And to me, that's sort of the Band-Aid on a bullet wound type of mentality.
Yeah,
it's like,
100%.
Here's this pill. It'll get you through the next couple weeks, but like, I think for us, it's like, what's the sustainable thing that's going to help us throughout our lives? Like, that should be a temporary thing to get through a temporary time. And the goal should be to get you back to that healthy level of like, riding the waves of life.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, trying to find the root cause. And like you said, not just, you know, putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Like, what's causing this? Let's find out. Like, you know, assess yourself, right? Like, self-awareness, I think, is huge. You know, so when you are feeling down, like, why am I feeling this way? You know, like, attack those feelings. Like, don't be afraid of them. You know, face those.
So how did personal development get involved? Like, you're always reading books, whether it's sports psychology or things to help you grow. So it's, how did that come about, and how has that helped you on your journey?
Back to the, you know, me working as a personal trainer at World Health. How they did it was they had you mentor with one of the elite trainers. Okay, so it was a mentorship program. You met with these trainers once a week, roughly. But, I mean, you see them every day. So I decided, well, I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to get a mentorship for my first 6 months, and like that's the only requirement. Well, I'm going to get a mentorship for the next 6 months as well, and then the 6 months after that. So I constantly wanted a mentor in my corner, right? And it was through, you know, this mentorship that I was able to gather different ideas on, you know, on personal development, on goal setting, on, you know, all those things. Time management, I think, is also huge. One of my mentors, Barrett Donovan, a trainer out of Calgary, he introduced that concept to me, and I still use it to this day. You know, having a daily planner and you know, highlighting different parts of my day, right? So say, you know, fitness and, you know, exercise, whatever. Okay, I'm going to highlight that in green. All right. Personal development, whatever reading I want to do for the day, we'll say that's blue. You know, meal prep. Okay, we'll make that orange. And, you know, you fit in, you know, everything you want to do throughout the day. And then you're able to look at your day and like, okay, well, I have an extra hour here. How do I want to spend that hour? How do I want to invest my time in that hour to maximize the day? So for me, I think time management was probably the biggest influencer on me.
Are there any guys, so Kamara is one of my favorite running backs, but obviously Marshawn Lynch back in the day and things too.
Oh, yeah.
So I have players that I modeled my game after. Who are some guys that maybe you've modeled your game as a receiver after?
Oh, okay. Man, there's a lot.
We can go down the list.
Yeah, let's do it. First and foremost probably would be Julian Edelman. That's a guy I look to, and just the toughness that he shows going over the middle, making those catches, and you know, more importantly, what he does after the catch, I think is huge too. You know, one of my old coaches, Coach Snoop, actually, he'd always say, "You're expected to catch the ball. Like, you play receiver, that catch the ball, but what are you going to do for me after the catch? That's what I want to see." So, you know, once I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, all right. Well, that's another part of my game I want to work on.
Yeah.
You know, so Julian Edelman in that aspect. I like Odell Beckham with with his ability to catch the ball one-handed. That's something I practice, and that's something I, you know, aspire to emulate in his game for sure.
You have some nice one-handed catches from your highlight reel there.
Hines Ward is a guy too. His toughness in the blocking game. Him, Anquan Bolden as well. And then in terms of you know, character, and Larry Fitzgerald is a guy I think to look at in terms of just the way that he approaches the game, his professionalism, and just the character that he displays. I think, he's a guy that every athlete, I think, could look to and pick some sort of quality and try to emulate.
It's funny because I even found, I definitely had guys that I emulated my game after, but do you ever find that numbers on the football field have personalities? Like the guys that you take after, for me, it was number 34 became that number that I should probably be a 44 because it was that number came up a lot in life. And like the only guy that wore it while I was still playing was Chad Cackert. For Toronto.
Yeah,
he was good for a little bit,
but he had a good run.
You know, the 40s have been saved mostly for fullbacks. Or Peyton Hillis was number 40 for a little while.
That's right.
He was my favorite for that 1 year.
That 1 year, he had the Madden cover year. And what happened to him?
Especially as a Browns fan, you know, we thought he was going to be the savior, but unfortunately, his career sort of didn't pan out, and he left on sort of bad terms mid-year and got hurt a bunch. So you never know sort of how that career is going to go. But for me, it was the Earl Campbells back in the day and the Walter Paytons, Jim Browns, which he wasn't 34, but you know, and it was emulating, like, I got obsessed with the history of football a little bit and just seeing the different parts of people's games and how you could be a power back. And one of my favorite highlights, and this is going to go against everything football is trying to accomplish right now with concussion protocols and safe tackling, but Earl Campbell, when he puts his head into the guy's chest and hits him back, the guy falls like a sack of bricks, but probably hits him back about 3 feet. And then he goes, and then there's another one where he gets hit in the head on about the 2-yard line and stumbles around and basically does a 360 pirouette and ends up in the end zone.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's freakish plays that he had.
Yeah, another one too that stands out is an Adrian Peterson play. I think it was against the Packers where he just puts his head down, like crown of his helmet, and just runs through the guy, and gets up and keeps going.
It's such it's strange because I wouldn't take back anything I did in my career, but I kind of worry about how my head is impacted long term. I mean, like, that research started to come out about the same time. I mean, everybody's always worried about their kids playing sports because there is that risk for injury. So how do you feel, like, I think the game is changing even at the grassroots level to more, like, you're going to start out playing touch or flag football at a young age, and you're only really going to bring tackling into it at about the high school level. So do you think that shift's going to happen? Like, how have you seen the concussion protocols change? And then, you know, how has that impacted the game too?
You know, for me, like, I haven't had to deal with it firsthand. I'm fortunate to not have ever suffered a serious concussion, but I do think that you just alluded to the idea that you know, they might not introduce tackling until, you know, the high school level. I'm pretty sure they do that with hockey right now. They don't introduce hitting until what?
I believe 12
or 13.
13-ish, yeah. I think, I mean, like, that might be a good idea too. But yeah, like the 7-on-7 tournaments, the touch tournaments that's what's growing the game immensely too. And it's allowing, you know, receivers and defensive backs to really work on their technical skills and not just solely resort to, I'm just going to run into this guy and hit him with my head as hard as I can. Like, well, no, I'm going to wrap him up. I'm going to get positioning on him. I'm going to bring him down. So I think those little details will make a difference down the road.
Yeah, it seems it's evolving so quickly too. Like, the thing I love about football is, to me, it reminds me, it's the closest thing to the gladiatorial arena.
Yeah. Where
I feel I'm a history buff and enjoy the Roman times and things. And that's always, it's like the raw emotion that you have to put into it. Yes, it's your skill and your will that are involved in playing the game of football, but it's that battle with the person across from you, and it's willing to do what it takes. I mean, I wish, for sure, I want to put on the Al Pacino Game of Inches.
Yeah.
So good.
If that doesn't get you going about life or workout or whatever, you're not, you don't understand. You're not a human being. But that's what I love about football, is the fact that it gives us ability for the seemingly impossible, or like these amazing moments, to happen. So, I mean, we talk about one-handed Odell Beckham catches. We talk about Earl Campbell running people over. It's like it gives that ability for amazing things to happen. And part of that is that raw emotion that goes into football. So it's, at what point do these hitting rules get in the way of the game and, like, destroy the game that we love?
Yeah. A guy that I watched growing up that I loved, in terms of raw emotion, was Steve Smith with the Carolina Panthers. Just so contagious. Like, every first down catch that he made, he gets up and he's fired up for the whole game. You know, and it's funny because, like for me personally, I feel I perform at my best when I'm calm, I'm cool, I'm collected. And the odd time I'll have that emotion take over, and you know, it's after usually a big play. But, you know, 10 seconds later, I'm immediately back to center and just, okay, next play, you know. But in those moments when the emotion does take over, that's when I'm having the most fun, for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely it was even funny, you walking in here today, it's like there are different personalities of teams. And I almost find that there might be an optimal one, but the best coaches bring out their style of play. And I mean, at the NFL or CFL levels, you can bring in players that emulate the type of game that you play. But then there's also the coaches that are adaptable to who they have and the pieces that they have around them.
For sure.
So there's sort of that equal, you can bring in talent, you can bring in guys that fill the roles that you want on the team, but you also have to, like, there's different each team has a personality. And so I brought it back to St. Paul's versus Churchill 2008 and in a championship game, but it was, we had the talented players, but we were very a loose mindset where it was, we were just shooting the shit before the game, and we were like ragging on each other and sending jokes around, and it was like, but that was our way of staying loose going into an important game, and we knew what was at stake, but it was just, we didn't want to be overly aggressive, we wanted to be loose and just enjoying it, whereas we played St. Paul's, who brings in the priest before the game, says a prayer, and they're all hand in hand in brotherhood, and they were really well disciplined, and maybe less raw talent, but just that discipline and knowing where they were supposed to be and just having rep things time and time again until it's perfect. And that was such a great game. Like, it was, we ended up winning by 2 points, but it was back and forth at the end, 28-26, which, funny enough, this year, so Vincent Massey plays St. Paul's, and it's the same coach that coached me, and it was 28-25 that Vincent Massey won. So, and it's 10 years since that game. So I went, this is really nostalgic in a way. Like, you know, you have there were so many echoes of that game 10 years ago.
Eerily close.
Eerily close. Even how things went down, it was just back and forth and some errors on both sides. And then it was like, but they rallied together, the Vincent Massey team, and found a way to win, which it's cool that you can have those different mentalities, but then each team has a chance to win. Yeah. Like, St. Paul's has won tons of years in the past. Like,
I think, as you just touched on, you know, the coach is being able to adapt to the type of players that they have. I mean, well, let's get back to the Patriots. I'm not a Patriots fan by any means, but like, for me, it's hard not to appreciate greatness, right? Like, you look at what Belichick and Brady have done over the years, and it's historic. Those two are the only, like, two constant guys that have been in that like program. It's weird calling an NFL team a program. Dynasty, yeah. You know, new OCs every year. Well, not every year, but, you know, every third year or so, they have coaches coming in and out. They have all these new players, and a lot of them aren't really high, like, first-round draft picks because they're in it every single year. But what they're great at is, okay, like, these are the players that we have. This is the talent at our disposal. How are we going to deploy this? And every year they're right there at, you know, 10-6, 11-5, some more so 12-4. And they're, you know, they're finding those ways to adapt, you know, year in, year out. So, yeah, I think coaching does go a long way.
So maybe who is the best coach you've had, and or the best moment you've had playing, or even game?
Wow, that's okay.
I know it's a two-part question.
That's a loaded question. Yeah. That's a loaded question. Best coach. It's tough to pinpoint, like, best coach, because you know, like, that's kind of, it's
unfair to the other coaches.
Yeah, it's that, and it's subjective, in, you know, in terms of how we're defining best. But I guess, like, for me, the closest coach that I've been with would be Coach Snoop, Matthew Blocker. I played for him my whole junior career. He was a great motivator. So, like, not really an X's and O's guy. Like, he knows his stuff, but he didn't spend a lot of time, you know, breaking down, you know, plays and going through concepts or things like that. He was more so the guy that, you know, on game day or before the practice starts, like, you're ready to play for him every single day. You're ready to play for him. So yeah, he's had a big impact on my life. You know, Coach Doby as well. He's a good coach. He's not, I wouldn't say he's a motivator or so, but you know, he's great with people. He's a great communicator. Yeah, he's I mean, you know, good guy to play with. But I didn't have the pleasure of playing for him as long as I did with Coach Snoop. So I think that's part of the reason why I lean towards him a little bit more, because I played with him for 5 years, so that's something that you can't really take away.
Yeah, there are definitely those different personality types. It's funny because Madden has it. You can pick the strategist, the motivator, or the team builder. And I would say Dobie is the penultimate team builder. He brings in really great people. And you have maybe that coach that's a motivator. Then you have that coach that's the strategist. And when you get those things aligned and you have all those things represented, I talk about the Colosseum in the Roman times and gladiators, but it's almost like a battle, right? Like a war, one side against the other. And so it does take the strategy. It does take that big speech before, that motivation, getting people don't realize that a football team, everybody has to be on the same page. So the motivator is the one that gets people to be living towards that purpose, to sort of get that team on the same page and working towards the same goal.
Yeah, I think like energy levels and body language is paramount in terms of that. Teams feed off, energy levels and body language. Like you can tell, you're sitting in the locker room before a game and you look like I'm scanning the room and I'm seeing, and I can tell who's ready to play and who's not. Like just based on their body language. Like, are you sulking? Are you sitting like this, or are you sitting at attention, ready to go? When you run out of that tunnel, is it with that raw emotion, or are you just going through the motions?
Yeah.
Big difference.
That's it's really funny though, because I remember the dressing room before games, and you had some really interesting things happen in terms of like the way guys prepared, or sometimes. So we had one guy, a receiver, last name Bowman, and he would always puke before games in the trash bucket. He would, because those nerves, people don't realize, playing in front of people and at a high level, you have all sorts of emotions going on, especially if he was a punter and a receiver, and one of those guys, a really hard worker, and just made a ton of plays and a ton of great catches. But if you saw him before the game, you're like, this guy's too nervous to play. Yeah. And fingers in the throat, and he'd be puking before a game. And it's funny because I never felt that I had that stress going into games. I would try and get myself jacked up or motivated. Typically that was listening to music and getting my head sort of in that. It's almost, I found a groove helped me. Whenever I was having fun and just kind of loose and dancing before a game.
100%.
Yeah.
It's funny, you just touched on that, like, getting nervous and anxious before games. And, prior to this season, I'd felt that, I was getting too nervous before games, in 2016, 2017, when I was back from that ACL. Because, being out of the game for so long, I built up those moments too much, right? So I was overthinking them. I was thinking about them for too long, Whereas, I got to this year and I shifted my mindset in terms of the way I prepare. I started really focusing on gratitude. I know you'll appreciate that. I always see you posting on that. But so what I would do is I have a little journal I'd write in every night before the game would start. And I'd think of, the things I'm grateful for. Very simple exercise. But, I'd keep those thoughts going into game day. And even, right before kickoff, I'm looking around whatever stadium we're in, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, wow, like, I'm so grateful to be in this moment right now. I'm just going to, focus on my breathing throughout the game and, stay in the moment and just, I'm so happy to be here right now. I'm not going to let anything distract me from that. And it helped immensely. I mean, I felt like this was the most consistent year that I had. And, I'm definitely going to keep that going for, whichever or wherever I'm playing.
I think that's crucial, what you just said, and just kind of with focusing on your breathing, living in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Instead of letting the anxiety get to you, because what's happening when that anxiety is getting to you is you're thinking of the things that could possibly go wrong, right?
Yeah.
So your head's not entirely there. You're always thinking ahead and trying to avoid something that may not even happen to begin with.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting with a sports psychologist actually just before the season started. And one of the things she touched on was, focus on what's in your control, right? So outcomes, you can't control outcomes, but what you can control is how you approach, the process, right? for lack of a better word. So, for example, say I have a rep and I'm running, we'll say a corner route. Okay, I can't control how the defender is going to play me. I can't control if the quarterback's going to throw me the ball. I can't even control if I'm going to, make the play and catch the ball. Like I can't foresee that. All I can do is focus on, okay, how am I going to beat my defender and how am I going to make this play, right? I can't control anything else, so that's the only thing I'm going to focus on. And approaching it in that sense completely shifted my game, I think, for the better.
I find that confidence was the biggest determiner of outcome in football. And it's almost not until hindsight that I realized that. But it was every time that the ball was thrown my way, and you have the self-talk even during a play, and it's hard to explain because you might not even consider it. It's so quick, but you have this, it's either a feeling, you're probably not self-talk more than the feeling of, I'm either going to catch this ball or I'm not.
I know exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
And so as soon as you get it in your mind, I'm going to make this play. And that's why it's crazy. Like you go up one-handed and you go, I'm going to find a way to bring this ball down. And that happens all the time. And then you see guys, even at the NFL level, where it's a simple over the middle 5 yards, they're wide open, and it hits their hands and they drop it.
Yeah.
And it's really that confidence piece that plays into that. It's, okay, I don't think I'm going to catch it. Well, you probably won't. You don't put your hands quite in the right spot.
Yeah.
And it's so minute, those
Where's the line between that right level of confidence and then overconfidence then?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's tough. I don't know. I'm not sure how to even explain that one.
Football players, I would say, ride the line of what that is.
Sure. For sure.
And it depends on what type of player you are, too, because I think there is the humble confidence, there's the in-your-face confidence, and then there's the cockiness.
Yeah.
And I find the cocky guys can be broken, where if you get in their head or if you get them off their game, they might be the best player. We've talked about Cam Newton before as one of those guys, but it's like if you get that cocky mentality, then you might bring that to your own teammates, and you don't want that. You want your team to sort of have your back at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that guy that's me, celebrating after.
He's always comparing himself even to his own teammates. It's like at the end of the day, this is a team game. We play it together, right? Like you're not getting the ball unless the quarterback's throwing it to you.
Unless the quarterback has the time to make the throw, right? It starts with the 5 guys in front of him as well.
Exactly.
Right? But in terms of that, I guess walking the line of confidence, I strive to be that guy that lets my play do the talking. I've never been much for, trash talking the opponent or trying to get into their heads or anything. Because I feel for me, it takes my focus away from what I need to do in the game, right? So instead of, me, staying in the moment and, focusing on the next play, here I am focusing on the opponent and trying to get into his head. And I feel like it's counterproductive for me anyway. Like some guys, they're so high strung that they need that engagement to keep their focus, right? Because I guess, I don't know, maybe their minds wander or something, but it's interesting competing against different guys and kind of just, going against those different personality types.
Well, receivers and DBs especially have that. You're sort of out on those islands sometimes, or you might see the same guy all game. So some guys will think that that's an advantage if I can be jawing in your ear and say, you're not going to make this play, you blank, throwing a couple of choice curse words in there and calling them some names. But I think there is a healthy level of that that's I'm trying to affect the opponent's game. And then there was the way I played, which I would say is much like you, where it's the humble, just I'm going to keep getting up, I'm going to keep fighting, I'm going to play my game. And it's funny because, I talk a mile a minute, I'm a communicator. But in games, I would be pretty silent. And then the only talk that I would have were when guys would try and say, try and get in my head. And I was like, come hit me again next play. You're not going to break me. And that was sort of my mentality was I might be only 5'9", and I might be 190 with these 230, 40-pound linebackers coming to hit me. But I went, I'm going to keep coming an entire game, and I'm just going to run into you. I was sort of a power back in a small man's body. But it was, you know, I didn't shy away from contact, and I just said I was going to wear guys down, and they were never going to break me. So I think there are the two personality types that can succeed in football for sure.
It's fascinating as a viewer to hear about the psychological warfare that goes into football, because as a viewer, and when I'm watching football, I'm not really thinking about that. It's the physical aspect. Like, this guy has one job and he has to do that job. I'm not thinking of what's going through his head when that ball is snapped, right?
Right.
So it's really interesting. I think probably a large majority of the audience doesn't really see that. Like, when it's that shorthanded pass that's less than 5 yards or something, and he drops it, and everyone's literally looking down on him, and he knows that.
But a good team, and that's the difference. We had a thing in high school, and we always said turn the page. Whenever something like that happened, it was turn the page, next play.
Right.
The outcome of this play doesn't have to determine the outcome of the next play, or it has nothing to do with it. If you do your job right, you're one play away from either scoring a touchdown, getting the first down, maybe they get a flag, whatever it is. But you're always one play away.
Just to always think that could be part of it, right? Like, you miss that 5 yard pass, and then what if it doesn't? He doesn't turn the page, and he carries that into the next play, and he's just thinking about it, and like, oh, here comes another pass, but he's still in the past.
Still, exactly. Yeah. I think you just articulated that, I think, beautifully there. Next play, right? It's all on how you respond, right? So you can drop a pass. Like, I'm sure everyone's dropped a pass at some point in their career, but how are you going to respond from that?
Yeah.
Right. That just happened, but that does not determine what you do in the next play, right? And I think that's what separates, the good from the great, is the ability to just flush it and move on, and not let a previous failure hinder you from a future success.
And that's why I think football teaches you so much about life, because such is life, where if you fail, you might fail at this or that or the other thing, but you can keep going and keep working towards whatever your goal is. If it's like getting a promotion at work, if you get overlooked the first time, you can either see that as a challenge that I should work better, more efficiently, get more done, something, or you can say, oh, this isn't for me, I don't deserve it, this, that, the other thing. So that mindset, like football, I felt taught so much to me about life. So it's great that you can apply that then to other things too. I did want to know that favorite football play that you have.
Favorite football play that I've made?
That you've made, or even the game that you had that was one of those games.
Okay. Well, favorite play, probably from this past season, where we were in Calgary, and I had a corner route, and it wasn't there initially. Quarterback was scrambling out, and he's rolling to his right, and he just points. It's like, hey, go that way, go upfield. So I, break my route, and I head upfield, and he threw it right down the sideline, and he put it in perfect spot for me. And I was able to just go up, and I, go up with one hand and get 1 foot down as I got pushed out of bounds. It's probably the favorite play, that I've made in my career. It's a catch that, as a receiver, that you dream of making. It's weird. Like, I visualize things like that. When I get into, meditation, sometimes, I'll visualize certain parts of the game. And oddly enough, making a catch like that was something that I've thought of 1,000 times.
What did it feel like making that catch? What was going through your head?
It's weird. There's nothing really going through my head. I was in that space of stillness. I'm going to kind of drive off a little bit. I was reading a book called Flow. Okay.
I was just thinking that. I was thinking flow states when you were saying that. So you took it right out of my mind.
Yeah. So, exactly. That book talks about the flow state. And, there was nothing that I was thinking of. I was just in the moment reacting. I felt like I was in that flow state. And, I don't know, I got up and I was like, oh, like that happened. Like the ref gave the signal, and I don't know. It's weird. I can't really even explain to you the moment or anything. It just, I I was just so excited when it happened afterwards.
For sure.
It's so funny. It's those seconds of just, it's almost blankness that you actually aren't thinking of anything. You're completely in the moment and just, you're like, that ball is mine.
Yes, it felt like time slowed.
True focus.
Yeah, it felt like time slowed down. And as you just said, like, that ball is mine. So as a receiver, I think it's vital to have that mindset when the ball's in the air, that's my ball. Like, immediately, that should be like the first thought that pops in your brain is, oh, that's mine. Like, the mentality of it definitely goes a long way because, well, as we said earlier, like if you go in thinking, oh, like I might drop this, you're probably going to drop it. But if you have that confidence that, no, this is my ball, 9 times out of 10, you're going to make that play.
It's something I read in a book that I'm just finishing up, but it's called The Happiness Advantage. I forgot the name last time, but The Happiness Advantage. And it says your brain actually doesn't comprehend, like, your imagination is like a real experience. So that visualization of catching those footballs and saying, I'm going to make that one-handed grab, or just thinking ahead, can actually make such an impact on when it comes to you actually doing it in that moment, because you've visualized yourself succeeding in that moment. I have both a favorite play and a favorite game that I've ever had. But unfortunately, my best play ever was at a Bisons practice. And it was, so we would, as running backs, sometimes go one-on-one with DBs whenever we sort of had an extra period or time. And so I went one-on-one, and I was just running a fade route over the top. And so I stemmed to the outside a little bit. The guy comes up, and he's right on my hip, and he's got a hand in my face, and he's actually grabbing. It's practice, so there's not a ref about to throw a flag. So he's sort of pinning my hand behind, and I went, but I just saw it. It was a high throw, and I went, I'm going to find a way to catch it. I'm coming down with this football. And so I jump, and I pin it against the DB's helmet, and then spin in the air, and I catch it one-handed on my back. So it was one of those, and we had the O-line coach was right there, and he was like, that's the best live catch I've ever seen. And I'm like, shit, I did this in practice. But it's so funny though when you just have that feeling that something is going to happen, and you just go towards that play, that end game, whatever it is, like making that catch. And then when it happens, you just go, oh, that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, for sure. To kind of go back to what you just touched on in terms of the brain and, the imagination, I guess, state. I feel sometimes, when I'm meditating and I'm visualizing these things, like I'm getting the same kinesthetic sensations. Like I can feel like my body is kind of like twitching almost and like reacting to the plays or the situations that I'm putting myself in. And then when it does happen on the field, you're not thinking about it. Now you're just reacting. It's like, oh, okay, well, I've taken myself through this experience already, and now I don't have to think about it. I'm just going out there and doing it. So like for me, for preparing for the combine coming up and hopefully being in a camp come June, these are things that I'm going to be, visualizing that I've already worked on, so that, when I get to that point, there's no, huge element of surprise. I feel like I'm already prepared for those moments.
Yeah, that preparation is so key. Are there any personal development books other than Flow? I know you mentioned Flow, but ones that have been really impactful on you and your journey?
There's been a couple. The Mindful Athlete by George Mumford was a big one. He just talks a lot in that book about mindful breathing. And that, that kind of impacted me and like on and off the field for sure. And the author, George Mumford, he worked very closely with the Phil Jackson teams in the 90s and the 2000s. So with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, worked very closely with them. And, both of them had come out and said that, his work was very influential on their success. So that kind of, opened my eyes to this whole mindfulness thing. And I've noticed, tremendous benefits from that. Another book, The Champion's Mind by Jim Afremow. That's another really good book. A combination of those two I'd read every day before game day.
Wow.
I'd go in there and I'd find, just key points to focus on. It could be breathing, it could be, gratitude, it could be, staying in the moment, leadership qualities. How can I be a better leader on this day? Just a bunch of things that helped out a lot. What I'm reading right now is called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell is his name. And it kind of touches on what he calls thin slicing, I guess. So trusting your initial instincts in a given moment and not being over analytical about things. I'm only a couple chapters in, but it's a pretty interesting book nonetheless. But probably those 2 or 3 I'd say would be the ones that have impacted me so far the most.
Somebody's got to come up with an athlete Bible. Because it's almost what you said is there's almost verses, or you'd find that chapter or that thing and you'd read it, and it would definitely it would affect you in that moment and your mindset. But putting you in that mind state that you're ready to play, it's almost we should piece together these sort of great passages or places in these different books.
You should trademark that right now.
The Athlete Bible. Trademark.
Yeah, that's yours.
People out there that I just freely gave that idea to. But no, I think. Yeah, that mindset's so important. Personal development. And again, that was something about your story that really stood out to me was during my time playing football, I didn't know about these things and I wasn't doing these things or reading these books. And I wish I would have known. I wish somebody would have almost said that there's another part of this. Yeah. I was sort of competing at only the physical aspect in a sense. I was training super hard, but maybe even too hard, right? I could have trained smarter. I could have had the knowledge, I could have understood positive mind states and things. I could have ate a little bit different. But it's tough because when you're that young and you're cooking for yourself and it's chicken, rice, veggies every day, it's tough to find those things that you can do even as a young adult playing football. And I think at the toughest times I felt like a piece of meat playing football, but I think it was that was a little bit my own doing, right? Because I was living that lifestyle too. So I guess that's what stood out about your story is the fact that you keep this knowledge, that you're going after that. And I think that it'll play such a big part in your success coming up too, is like getting that mindset right and having the work ethic and the desire is a lot of the battle between it's that good to great jump, right? The guys that actually make it to the next level. That talent only gets you so far.
Oh, 100%.
And I'm almost grateful in life. I've always felt like an underdog, and maybe it's because I've had that mindset, but, I wasn't physically gifted in the sense that I was always going to be 5'9" and struggle taking off weight, but struggling to be fit in a sense.
Yeah.
And I was always a little bit too slow, a little bit too short, a little bit, I didn't quite have it, but kept striving forward and had that work ethic and that mentality. And I wish I would have found that next level of like what could get me just past the next person beside me. But it seems that you've found that, which is really, I don't know. Really
I hope
great.
so. There's still a long ways to go. Yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done. But I feel like I'm a bit of an underdog too, right? Starting football in grade 11 and not being my first sport, and obviously I'm not the biggest guy either, and I'm 5'9", 5'10", but I think we take pride in that. We take pride in that. We need that work ethic to succeed. We might not be naturally physically gifted, so we've had to work very hard to get to where we want to be, and I'm super grateful for that. I'm very grateful for all the experiences or adversities that have shaped me who I am today. Because I think had I been 6'4", 6'5", and everything handed to me.
Hey, what's wrong with being 6'5"?
Nothing for you. No.
But maybe I didn't articulate that properly. But, but I guess if everything had been handed to me, I don't think that I'd have the same mindset or mentality that I have. So I am grateful for all those things.
There's a documentary that I watched a long time ago, and it was actually about Aussie rules football. So I was on the way to Australia, and it might have been the plane ride to Fiji. I also went to Fiji on that same trip. It was an amazing experience, and just culturally and the beauty of the landscape, it almost seems like a different world there. That's besides the point. The documentary was about these athletes, and it was guys sort of that played on this national Aussie rules football team when they were 13 or 14. And it was funny because there was maybe a little bit of foreshadowing, but it was the most talented guy, and he sort of buzzed out and got involved in drugs and different things and fell off. And it's almost because it came too easy to him, right? And I definitely saw those guys around me in high school that were better athletes, but I was still playing football after they were done their careers. And at a certain point, it takes that work ethic and that passion towards it. So then there was another guy who was, again, naturally talented and one of the all-stars of the tournament and everything. And he also didn't make it. And it was not quite the same story, but he just fell off and lost passion for it.
Yeah.
The guy that made it was the quiet guy in the corner who was like sort of the underdog, who didn't quite have all the skills, but he had that drive and that determination. And the film ends with him stepping onto the Aussie Rules Football League, like onto the field for the first time in his first game. And there's so much of that story that shows through in that too. So go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, skill will always take you further than talent, as long as you're willing to work for it, right?
Skill or will?
Combination of the two.
I think a lot of people with natural talent tend to take that talent for granted, and so they don't work as hard as someone who maybe like you has to work a little bit harder than the person who is 6'5", right? Who can make those catches a little bit more easily and doesn't have to jump as far, right?
It's funny because I've never seen you in person before today, so I was actually expecting, even in your highlights, I didn't really look at the size of you.
That's hard to see on.
I would have guessed you were 6 foot something going into a 6'2".
For sure,
so it's something you don't realize until somebody. And we've been sitting in chairs, so I haven't really thought of it. But that's super funny. So, what is your daily routine like now, training for the Combine, and how do you expect that process is going to go for you?
Daily routine right now, I'm still in classes at the U of M, but so I'm fortunate right now to be living at home again for the first time since I was 18. So just having home cooked meals again it's huge. It reduces a lot of stress for sure. But so I'll wake up, I'll have my steel cut oats with the eggs and the avocado, and get the day started with that. I try to meditate for the first 10 minutes of my day to get things started and just get in the right frame of mind. So I'll go to whatever class. Like all my classes are in the morning, so I'll go to my morning class, and then for the afternoon, it's go time. Whether it's in the facilities doing weightlifting or on the field doing all the combine drills, speed training. Yoga, I'm doing yoga 3-4 times a week right now. I'm playing a little bit of basketball as well.
Nice.
A little bit of cross training. There's a lot of things I'm doing every day, and then to unwind, I guess, is when I'm doing my personal development, my reading and things like that, kind of near the end of my days. It's 2 to 3 times a day, 6 days a week right now.
2 to 3 training sessions?
Yeah, 2 to 3 training sessions a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
crazy.
People don't realize at a certain point I've even talked to CFL guys that it does become a job. I mean, you got to have the passion for it, and it can be maybe one of the most fun jobs in the world. And some people might see it as they're pursuing their passion at the highest level, right? And I think that's optimally how it goes. But it is sometimes a struggle when you're putting in that much time and you're exhausted. And so it's finding that rest and relaxation and keeping your body healthy and your mind healthy is a struggle people don't see with athletes. They sort of see you on game days and they go, you live a privileged life in the sense that, you get to pick your classes earlier. You're showing up late all the time, and people don't realize that, yeah, I'm dealing with exhaustion. My body's hurting. I'm limping in between classes.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you expect your draft, like, how do you expect that day is going to go for you, the combine, and how do you envision maybe in the best case scenario what's going to happen?
Okay. So I'm going to kind of take a twist on this, but okay, so another book I read, The Power of Now. So it talks about, staying present and basically not having any expectations. So what, trying to approach it with that mindset of, I'm not expecting things to happen, but I'm going to be grateful if they do happen, right? So like a lot of our stress in life is our perceived, our perception of a situation, right? So I don't want to go into, the combine or the draft day and expect things to happen for me. All I want to focus on is being grateful for the experience and just putting my best foot forward. So to be honest, like I haven't really visualized, how I expect it to go, I guess. Like I've only visualized small parts of the process. So things like, okay, we're going to do one-on-ones at the Western Regional Combine. So, I'm visualizing the one-on-one reps. I'm visualizing, running the 40-yard dash. And funny enough, I played soccer growing up, and one of my coaches, like, he called me Cheetah. That was my nickname, was Cheetah. So here I am. I'm visualizing, okay, like, I'm a cheetah. I'm going to run as fast as I can at this 40 yards. Nice. But yeah, so just small things like that, trying not to, like I said, have any expectations for that day. But just being grateful for the opportunities and the experiences to come.
Yeah, it's that put in the preparation time now, make sure your mind's right, but anything can happen, but be ready for that. And prepare your mind, prepare your body, everything. But come that day, just enjoy the process. Be completely present. Be there. And be grateful that you're there, because it's an opportunity to extend your football career and to play professionally at the sport you love. Like, it's when you have that in your mind, as opposed to, like, some people I think get caught up in it's having realistic expectations, I think, too. Is like, I'm going to bring my full self. I'm going to prepare as much as possible. But certain things, especially in sport, a lot of it falls down to either chance or fate, whatever you believe in. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But there's only so much
you have control over.
It's
talked about.
Exactly. You only have so much control. So is there any advice that you would have for people following a similar path to you, or something you wish you knew going into this that you know now?
Oh, okay. Advice. It's funny. Like, just as you were talking, I just happened to look and I see this. Remember the guy who quit? Me neither. So I guess like that's the best advice that I could give to any young athlete out there is don't stop until someone tells you that you can't play anymore. And even if someone tells you that, like, just keep going until you'll know when the time is right for you to I guess stop playing. But if you're passionate about it, just go for it. And be committed to the daily process of being better. Don't be, overly analytical of the future, and try not to, expect things to happen for you. Just focus on being a better you, and good things will happen.
That echoes. It's funny. We've had another football player in here, Mo Leggett, and his was never quit and find a way. And I think you essentially said a very similar thing. And I don't expect that you've seen that part of that podcast or anything.
I watched the first 15 or 20 minutes of that. Okay. Actually. Yeah. When you'd asked me to come on, I did some research, and I was scrolling through Mo Leggett, no way. He's one of the coaches at Recruit Ready as well, actually.
Cool. Awesome.
So yeah, unfortunately I didn't I didn't watch the whole thing. I feel bad. But
oh, no.
All okay. That was a long one.
Yeah. But I saw the first 20 minutes or so, and kind of just really quick too. Something that resonated with me with what he said was, I forget how he worded it, but it was if you're if you're too scared to give your opinion on something, you're a slave technically, right? So like for me, I admire athletes who aren't afraid to be themselves, you know, who they don't just, you know, go by the book on everything. They're just themselves, and they you know, they stand up for what they believe in, and you know, they don't care what other people think, or you know, if it might not you know, be the best for PR if they say a certain thing, but if they believe in it, they're not gonna
yeah, there's
you know?
it's funny because I find sport sometimes doesn't allow for that.
Yeah.
Where you are expected to say the right thing as opposed to the thing you really feel. And so it's to keep coaches happy and media. You don't want to give them too much insight on what's happening in the locker room and things. So I struggled with that a little bit when I played football at a high level. Was sometimes the locker room culture and my authenticity clashed. And I went, well, I can't really be my entire self. There were people that I could be that around that appreciated me for me, but it was, you know, certain ways I acted, the fun that I like to have. Like, some people didn't buy into the way that I played the game. And so it does sometimes feel limiting, and there can be, the unfortunate part is you get 80 males in a room. Sometimes the culture can turn toxic.
Yeah.
And I feel that I saw that a little bit, and yet that's not every single dressing room. You know, it sort of depends on your place in that locker room. Like, if you feel valued and you have that sense that you're an important part of the team, you become that much more successful. Whereas sometimes guys rag on you and like, they don't buy into the person you are. Like, you have to find the right fit for you, I guess. And so sometimes I worry about the toxic side of sport and even football and the masculinity in the dressing room.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's funny, like, you know, you touched on, you know, sometimes guys say things that, you know, upset the media, or, you know, you don't want to give too much away in terms of what's going on, you know, behind closed doors. But, you know, when the athletes do give those, we'll say those cliche answers, like, people are just as upset, it seems.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, this guy is, you know, he just says the same thing over and over again. There's no personality to him. And then when there is personality to the guy, they like nitpick every single little thing about it. You know, so it bothers me a little bit, but I mean, it is what it is, right?
That's just when you got to tune out those people, right?
Yeah.
Their opinion ultimately doesn't matter to who you are, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like we said, or you know, it's out of our control. So I'm not going to stress about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice when you can live authentically and be your complete self in a dressing room. So what's the most difficult thing you've had to deal with in your life, and how did you overcome it?
Well, two things. When I was 10 years old, my stepbrother passed away. But it was when I was really young, sorry. When he was 5, I was 2. He started getting seizures, I guess. And it's a super rare disease. It's called Batten's disease. So these seizures start happening, and by the time he was, you know, 5.5, 6 years old, this is weird, his mind state like reversed back to that of like a 9-month newborn. So like a 5-year-old basically unlearned, I guess, everything, became paralyzed from the neck down, blind, crazy. So the doctors gave him 1 year to live. So he was, roughly 6 years old at the time. So they were projecting him to live till he was 7. Well, he lived till he was 13, and I was 10. So, you know, going through that, and, you know, and when he had passed, and kind of seeing how it affected my mother. It was her son from a previous marriage. You know, at the time, like, I understood, obviously, like, what happened, but I didn't really fully grasp, like, the magnitude of what had happened, if that makes sense. So, yeah, going through that was, I don't know, a big hurdle, I guess, in terms of how I overcame that. I'm not really, I don't know. I was 10 years old. I don't really have an answer for that one. But yeah, that was a life-changing experience for sure. And then the ACL injury, I mean, that's the next thing I think that probably shaped who I am today. And I'm grateful for both, because I think both have a lot of lessons in them, and how, yes, today is a dark day, but there's always a brighter future ahead if you're willing to pursue that.
I think of the yin and yang with that, is there's always the light and the darkness, and the darkness and the light. And, and so it's that hope when things are going negatively, or you have to, when you suffer loss, or you go through an injury, or you go through those negative times. It's like, if you have hope that things will get better, and you keep showing up, keep putting in the work, and keep an eye on yourself even, and keep your mind state healthy. That's important, and you got to be hopeful, because the adverse to that is despair. And when you live that way, it's a rough road. Like that's when you can make a hell on earth for yourself, is just living in that pit of despair. And I've been there before. I've been to that dark, depressed state of just like, what the hell is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
And yet those things that put us there can sometimes allow us to live the life that we believe in, or that we're supposed to, depending on how you view that. But it's like, is it fate or chance? Who knows? Are they sort of interrelated in a sense? But it puts you on that path, and then can lead to a crazy amount of growth.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think, a mindset that's really helped me, or we'll say, I guess, a sentence. It's as simple as a sentence is, what is this moment trying to teach me? So, any time that, we go through adversities, is instead of thinking, oh, why me? Why did this happen to me? Approach it to, okay, like, what is this experience trying to teach me right now? What can I take away from this, so that, I can be a better person, and maybe this won't happen again if I'm more prepared in the future, or if I'm just, better equipped to handle it.
Yeah.
Very similar to kind of like how I approach anything or I try to approach anything that happens to me, and it's because you can't always control the outcome, right?
Yeah.
But you can choose what to do about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I always try to come out with. It's not, don't put yourself down, like do something because of it.
What is your goal with football, and what do you hope to achieve before your career is done?
My goal with football is to use the platform to inspire others to be the best versions of themselves. So if I'm able to impact any young athlete out there, I won the day, in my mind, And in terms of my career, again, we talked about expectations, and I mean, I just want to play for as long as I can. I don't have any expectations on how long that's going to be, but I'm going to do as best I can to play for as long as I can, right? Yeah. But yeah, I'd say that's my number one goal, is to just inspire others. Like, there's a lot of negativity in this world sometimes, and if you focus on that negativity, it's going to bring you down. But, if you're constantly, positive and optimistic about the future and about yourself, I believe great things can happen. So,
yeah, and that's something with this podcast that we hope to achieve too. It's again, inspire others, equip them with tools, share this information and people's stories. I think there's something bonding between that, and I think we all go through. You can find even pieces of life in football. You can find it through the person who started a business. You can find those inspiring stories everywhere, but it can also show you something in your own life, or make you aware of something that maybe you should be doing, or that you should be engaged with. So it's we set out on this process now almost a year ago, and it's trying to get varied guests on and get a different perspective of things. I know we sort of have our comfort zone a little bit, but we try and go outside of that as well, and bring in people that, you want to be able to connect. And sometimes people, if we don't have that knowledge base, it's sometimes difficult to connect and really understand.
For sure.
Whereas I understand the football mentality because I've been in that, or the athlete mentality of other people. So it's been a fun process. So, and it's interesting that, even being a football player, it's like to inspire others is the goal. Like it's not a selfish pursuit. It's like, no, I want to share knowledge. I want to help build other people up. And this can be a platform to lead me in these different directions and allow me to have that impact. There are a lot of, during my time with the club, we started what's it called? The Break the Silence on Violence Against Women prevention program.
Oh, cool.
And that was a really cool experience to just, beyond football, we can make a difference with what we're doing. And so being involved in that process, although it wasn't something I directly was, it was, just that knowledge that football players are good people and they want to be doing good in the community and they'll share their voice. That was inspiring to me too. And I think reflecting on that and realizing, well, I have a voice, I have these opinions and ideas too, so let's build a platform that can share these as well.
Yeah.
And so, that's why it's great having someone like yourself share your football story and all the trials and tribulations that you've been through too.
Yeah, this is a very cool experience for sure. I guess just seeing what you guys are doing with this podcast is really cool, and it's inspiring in itself. You're reaching an audience that I would not have been able to reach otherwise, right? So to be able to come on here and gain your guys' perspective as well is, like I said, it's a cool experience.
Yeah, I think we're going through the growth process. It's like, we don't necessarily know where the end game is, but we know the trajectory, we know the message, we know our core values. Yeah. And we're looking but there's only so much time we can invest in it. Those blocks in the day, to try and do everything and keep some sort of balance is difficult. And yet I think we do a pretty good job of managing it. If we didn't, we probably wouldn't be sitting here. There definitely have been times where it's like, oh God, not that you dread doing the podcast because it's something we enjoy, and it's sometimes getting there is the hardest part. And that's the same thing in football. Sometimes the training sessions, it's getting there is the hardest part.
Yeah, once you start, it's like sometimes starting is the hardest part, but once you start, now I'm back into that rhythm.
And you figure it out as you go, right? Like that was what the process with this podcast too, is like we didn't know, the idea in the head is always like, let's record a podcast, it's going to be an hour or 2 hours long, and we just post it, right? Like that's what you're thinking of, but then it's like, oh no, we need equipment, and we need to be able to make sure the equipment's working properly, and we need to make sure we're editing, and we got to have these pictures and thumbnails for YouTube and make sure it's hitting all these different platforms. You don't think of all these things to begin with, but if you let that get to you in the beginning, it becomes so daunting that you don't even want to start. So you just got to do it and then figure it out.
Yeah. There's a guy that that I follow on Instagram, and I was fortunate to. He was actually on the Calgary Stampeders the year I was practicing with them. His name is Dexter Janke, and so he played with the Stamps for, I want to say 3 or 4 years, and he's now on the Canadian men's bobsled team, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
very cool.
So he went through this thing where every morning he'd put like a little hashtag mindful mornings with Dexter. I don't know. I forget the hashtag, to be honest. But one of his core principles is you must engage in consistent action, and that really resonates with me. It's not sitting down and thinking about doing something. It's getting up and doing it, and like you said, figuring it out kind of as you go. So I think
that's
actually doing it is
that's
huge.
essentially what discipline is.
Yeah,
is that consistent action. It's doing
the thing.
it's doing the thing that you said you were going to do even long after the will to do it has left.
Mm-hmm. That's worded very well.
Maybe as the send-off question, what do you love most about football?
Just the competition. For me, I love football. I love the sport of football. It's my favorite sport. But I love a lot of other sports as well. Just based on, just that competitive environment that I'm going to win and you're going to lose type mentality, just lining up across from a guy and just seeing who's better on that day, or pushing yourself. It's as far as your your limits will allow. I'd say that's probably the number one thing is I love to compete. I love to win. I mean, like even playing 2K with my buddies, like I'm not trying to lose. Yeah. I'm never trying to lose. I'm trying to win every single time. So yeah, I'd say just with sports in general, you know, I think competition brings out the best in ourselves. It introduces people to their character in a sense. So yeah, I'd say that's probably the number one thing for me.
Yeah, it definitely shows you what you're made of when you pursue something to a high level. And I thank football for so many lessons. Like, it showed me what work ethic was. And when you learn work ethic, you can then learn to apply it to just about anything in life. So I think that that's what sport can do, and especially competition. I think there's the negative side of competition, which, you know, there is performance enhancing drugs, and we see some of the, you know, you see the punch drunk boxer at the end of his career where he's gotten hit too many times. So there's like there's that negative side, but there's also the opportunity for self-development, amazing things to happen, building self-confidence, allowing your energy to be put in that positive place. So it teaches you so much.
Oh yeah.
And I think the game of football especially has saved, I would say, saved a lot more lives than it's hurt.
Yeah.
And that's not to say the hurt doesn't exist and that people don't get concussions or suffer sort of through the system, but it allows people to pursue their highest self in a sense. Like it allows for that energy to be put constructively where it could be put in terms of gangs or just negative lifestyles. Like, you don't know what people might have ended up doing had they not had football or their sport as that release. So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like for me, like I went to Sisler High School in the North End. Yeah, I mean, there are all those other avenues around me that I saw, but you know, football, like as you just said, it's saved a lot more lives than it has hurt. And I mean, I think I'm definitely one of those people. And yeah, in terms of like, you know, reaching your highest self, like you explained it in a really great way, I think. Yeah, no, that was, I mean, you pinpointed pretty basically everything that
I have moments of genius and then bouts of crazy tangential thinking. I think that's how my brain works. I like to explain it to people like a Family Guy joke where there's segues sometimes, cut scenes that go somewhere completely different.
Yeah.
But then I go back to the story and then I try and have some sort of, we're sitting on the couch and then there might be something good at the end that you come out with.
Yeah.
Great show. That's funny.
Yeah, no, that's I love ridiculous comedy, so that goes along with my likes as well. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. But it's that love of sport, that love of competition and getting better. And so I guess to send us off, like, we wish you the best of luck in the CFL draft and through the process of the combine and the rest of your training. I'm sure it's stressful at times and you're going to 3 sessions a day, but the fact that you're still staying on top of stuff like personal development and this mindfulness, I think will give you this edge. And I feel like
definitely,
you know, I sort of see within your story that you will be successful in whatever you do. And so hopefully that's football, and hopefully a team takes a chance on you. And I would bet on it, and I hope that for you too.
You have the best mindset, I think, going into this that you could possibly have.
I appreciate those words. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, and thanks again for having me on here. This was a blast.
Awesome. Yeah. Hopefully, lots of interviews in your future. The thing that's nice about this too is you know, this isn't a 2-minute clip on TSN. It's like we get to sit down and
2-hour clip.
2-hour clip. We get to bring people in and really dive into their stories and what makes them tick. And it's like, selfishly it helps us build, but like we hope that other people take things, and then the fact that others get to learn from it too. It's like it's great to have that too. So we're happy to have you on and share your story, your football story and life story and your mindset. And we wish you all the best. So. To send us off, where can we find Dylan Schrot? Is there anything that you'd like to share with listeners and viewers in terms of Bell Let's Talk or websites or anything else you're involved in? Social media, info.
Okay, I guess, you can find me on Instagram. I'm not on Twitter or anything. I try to limit my social media intake. but it's at Shooter 6 with 4 O's.
Shooter.
Yeah, it's been my nickname in the football community for about 5 years now.
How does everybody get a nickname? I was new guy for 2 years. I just had to live with it at a certain point. People didn't know my real name.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess and then I guess in terms of the Bell Let's Talk thing, I've said it a few times, but there's always a brighter future ahead. So don't let today's struggle hinder you from pursuing your maximum potential as a human. Just strive to be better than you were yesterday. And I think, if you approach it with that mindset, great things can happen for you. So
in terms of the mental health aspect as well, there's places to call, but it's also being willing to open up and be vulnerable and share your story.
Yeah,
I think is really important. And you'll find that there's a ton of supportive people around there. We're destigmatizing it. We're not finished with that mission. Mm-hmm. There are still sort of the preconceived notions and the stereotypes on it. But yeah, being willing to be vulnerable, share your story, and build each other up, and be supportive of others going through their struggles as well.
Yeah.
So just as that, but there are places to call and people that care, I think, is a major thing.
Absolutely. Just for me personally, like whoever is going through anything out there, my line's open. I'm always open for a conversation. So, don't feel like people are going to judge you if you're coming out and sharing your story or sharing your struggle. There's always somebody out there that cares enough to listen and to help you out. So
definitely.
Yeah. People are there, and people are there to listen. I actually reached out to somebody yesterday and tried to get them talking, but it's also letting people know that you're there, I think, too. Like sometimes it's like you're less likely sometimes to reach out to a stranger than somebody you know. So just sharing with that person that you're there for them regardless of what they're going through is another piece to that as well.
Yeah.
And as always, did you have anything else?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Just one more thank you to you guys.
Sure.
It was a great experience.
Awesome. We're happy to have you. And as always, we're Be The Change YPS on Instagram, Facebook. We do have a Twitter. We're in the midst of starting one. We've also tried to start Reddit and things, but it's trying to keep up to date on all this. We
try to limit our social media too.
Yeah, we need to do a better job, but yeah, trying to limit social media can be difficult at times. Yeah. And always, if you have anything for us, if you want to reach out to us, we are an ear to listen as well, but we have the email at info@bethechangeYPS.com. Announcements, we actually did upload a short video of our taste test of Happy Honey. So that is something that we're going to try and start doing, is doing shorter clips that can be helpful or at least informative to you out there listening. Subscribe where you're listening, either on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you happen to be enjoying this podcast. And once again, thank you, Dylan Schrot, for sitting down with us.
Thank you very much.
And all the best to you. And take care out there, people.
See ya.